Welcome to ILTV's Israel Daily. I'm Aaron Porras.
And I'm Natasha Kirchuk. Coming up in today's newscast, 99% of the votes are counted, and it looks like Israel is facing yet another political deadlock.
The Israeli Prime Minister may be at risk of catching the coronavirus after a questionable meeting.
And Israel has finally selected its song for the Eurovision singing competition in 2020. Well, 99% of the votes have been counted in the latest round of Israel's national elections, and it looks like Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu's right-wing party is still in the lead with 36 seats so far. The Blue and White Party is trailing behind right now with about 33 seats.
Now on the right, the ultra-Orthodox parties Shas and United Torah Judaism have 9 and 7 seats each respectively, and Yamina has 6. And on the left, the Joint Arab List has 15 seats, and Labour Gesher Meretz has 7.
These numbers mean that based on the latest count of 99% of the votes, the right-wing bloc has 58 seats and the left wing has 55 seats, including the Joint Arab List, even though Blue and White has refused to sit with the Arab Party. Now, the remaining 7 seats lie with Avigdor Lieberman's Yisrael Beitenu party, making Lieberman the so-called kingmaker once again, since neither of the blocs have enough seats to form a coalition. And Lieberman has vowed that he will not sit in a right-wing government that includes ultra-Orthodox parties.
Now, the right is still celebrating the count as a victory, however, because they only need 3 seats to reach the 61-seat threshold and form a government coalition. And finally, unofficial election results are not expected to be published until Wednesday night. The official results will only go public on March 10th.
As of now, Israel is still looking at a political deadlock, but Netanyahu says Likud is hoping to bring in so-called deserters from other parties to make up for their 3-seat shortfall. Blue and White
Knesset members Tzvi Hauser and Yoav Hendel, who previously worked as aides to Prime Minister Netanyahu, have denied reports that they are considering joining the Likud, and so has MK Omer Yankelevich, who has made headlines after it was reported that Likud had threatened to publish embarrassing recordings of her if she doesn't defect.
Right now, Knesset member Orly Levy Abexis, who heads the Gesher faction, has also been tipped as a possibility for joining Likud. The question now is whether there is any hope for a future unity government.
So what is the next Israeli government coalition going to look like? And what does Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu need to do to pass the 61-seat threshold? Joining us with some insight is Ziv Maor, the chairman of Israel Media Watch. Thank you so much for being with us. Now,
hi.
I want to start with Blue and White leader Benny Gantz has begun efforts to pass a law that would prevent an indicted Knesset member from forming a coalition in the government. Will the court prevent Netanyahu from forming a coalition?
Well, it's up to the court. First of all, if the court will decide so, and second of all, if this decision, this illegal decision, will be obeyed. These are the two questions at hand.
Well, would it be illegal if the High Court passed it?
Yes, of course. There is no law that justifies banning a person who is being accused to become prime minister. On the contrary, the basic law of the government explicitly says and decides what happens when you have an indicted person who is going through a criminal trial while he's being offered to assemble the coalition and becoming prime minister. This is what the law says. So there is no legal ground whatsoever to this decision, and this is, by the way, why the Blue and White Party tries to start up such a law, because currently this is not the word of the law.
All right, so we're finding ourselves in the same kind of political deadlock situation that we've seen in the last 2 elections, but the difference here is that Likud, or the right-wing bloc, has many more seats than in the last election. Now, Rivlin is most likely to tap Prime Minister Netanyahu as the person who is going to form the next government coalition. But is there a chance that Rivlin is thinking of an alternative, since that didn't happen in the last 2 elections?
So last night there was an unofficial announcement from the president's office that's saying that he is contemplating giving the decision back to the Knesset, letting the members of the Knesset decide. Once again, this is illegal. Okay, the duty is upon the president. He's the only one who's got the authority at this point to appoint the candidate for becoming prime minister. If he will do so, it will be illegal. But once again, what is legal and what is illegal is becoming a bit blur in the situation, while many persons, President Rivlin among them, are trying to do whatever they can legally or illegally to prevent Netanyahu from becoming prime minister. This is the Israeli democracy fighting for its life.
All right, I want to move now to Avigdor Lieberman, the so-called kingmaker, the tying vote here. Or the tie-breaking vote. Yeah, the tie-breaking vote. Now, he has made 2 kind of opposing vows here. One, to not sit with Netanyahu, and two, not to sit with the Arab parties, and then of course also to prevent fourth elections. But he can't have it both ways.
Is he going to change his mind?
Well, first of all, there isn't going to be a coalition without the Haredim in him. It's quite obvious. And once
so will he prevent fourth elections by joining Netanyahu, or will he stick by his guns?
At this moment, when we see the number 58 on the boards, I don't think that fourth election is such a bad option. It's not such a bad alternative. I think that, well, the guilt at the end of the day sits on the Israeli public, which each and every individual made their mind, but as a collective, we did not make our mind. 58 is not enough to form a coalition. 54, 55 is definitely not enough, especially when
you're saying to go to fourth elections.
Currently, this is what I'm saying. As long as I'm not hearing a name and a deal from a potential deserter, that what they want in return from deserting to the right-wing bloc is reasonable, is not undermining the entire right-wing policy.
Right.
As long as we're not going to have a government that gets to decide and execute actual policies. As long as this is the case, fourth elections is the better alternative.
So you don't seem to think that it's possible that there will be enough deserters who will come over to the right wing with reasonable demands?
First of all, it is possible. It is possible. You mentioned a few names. I personally think that Hauser and Handel are not the ideal names, because as long as they are indeed the right wing elements in the left bloc, without a doubt, but they do have very strong personal disputes with Netanyahu, so there is no chance that they will sit under him. But there are the names in Lieberman's party. There is the entire party of Orly Levy, as you mentioned, and maybe even Amir Peretz, a colleague from the same bloc that they ran together. This might happen, but if we are having the two socialists, Orly Levy Abexis and Amir Peretz, in the coalition, this means that actually we do not have a right-wing coalition, because these two will never allow the government to execute right-wing, economically liberal policies.
So you're saying that even if they did get these people to sign on, it still wouldn't be effective for
for making things, for actually govern. And when the politicians not govern, the officials are, or so the office holders are.
All right. Well, unfortunately, we've run out of time, but I think you're the first person who came to the studio and said that you prefer fourth election. So
interesting point of view.
You will be remembered for that comment.
Well,
Thank you for joining us. All right, now the Joint Arab List Party has received an unprecedented amount of votes in this latest election, winning 15 seats so far. Now joining us to discuss why Israel's Arab sector is stepping up to the polls so much more than ever before is social activist Yosef Haddad, who's also the director of Beyachad Aravim Ze Leze. All right, so talk to us about why we're seeing so many more Arabs voting in this election than in the past.
A few reasons. One, the Israeli Arabs want to influence, wants to be a deciding part of the Israeli political, what we are seeing in the latest election. But also I want to show you, or I want to point at something. Take a look. The two parties that supposedly won the election, because we see that the Likud got more seats and the joint list got definitely more seats. The slogan was against the Likud was, everyone but Bibi. The slogan was against the joint list, everyone but Tibi. Both of them won.
Interesting.
So what I'm trying to say here is the hatred towards those leaders actually made the voters to go and vote for them. We've seen that, and it was quite an amazing achievement, especially for the joint list. But I want to cool down the celebration here, okay? I'm not saying it's not an amazing achievement for the joint list. They did something amazing to achieve 15 seats in the Knesset. But the fact is that I said it and I said it before. It doesn't matter if they have 10, 15, or 20 seats. We will see more of the same. What I mean is, yesterday we heard Ayman Oda saying, I am not going to sit down with Benny Gantz, definitely not sitting down with Bibi. Which means
Benny Gantz also. I mean, what I was just thinking is the fact that Blue and White said we're not going to sit with with an Arab party. So when he said that, it was like, okay, now Bibi's saying that, now Gantz is saying that, so now the Arabs say, well, we need to step up because.
So I'm asking you now the simple question: how they are going to really affect the Israeli Arabs, their lives, if they are sitting in the opposition, not being part of the coalition, which means. Part of not only by hatred they got the votes, they did a very massive campaign in the Arab streets saying that, hey, we are going to do everything for our society. We're going to break down the deal of the century. We're going to work out better infrastructure, better educations. But if they cannot really do that, the Arab voters, the Israeli Arab voters are not dumb. They are smart, and we've seen that. We've seen that how they treated the campaign of blue and white in Arabic and the Likud in Arabic, as well as when they pushed Esawi Frisch in the left party, Gesher Meretz Avoda. Eventually, what I'm trying to say is that the voters, the Israeli Arab voters, will punish the joint list if they don't bring receipts on the ground.
So that's actually something that I wanted to get into, because historically, a big argument, even from the Arab Israeli community against the joint list, was that the joint list didn't effectively represent their interests. Has that changed?
So in the joint list, as you know, it's quite a combination between a few parties. One of those parties is Balad, التجمع. And Balad is quite extremist. They actually, some of their members, or most of their members, they don't believe in the existence of Israel.
Which, quite frankly, then how could they be? I mean,
exactly.
And for many Israeli Arab voters who, I mean, they feel strongly Israeli as well.
For sure. A survey that was done a few months ago, they asked, how do you define yourself as Israeli Arabs? How do you find yourself? Above 70% answered, we define ourselves as Israeli Arabs. So they want to be an integral part. Again, the fact that they went to vote, and this is amazing. The percentage of the voters in the Arab sector was almost equal to the Jewish voters. That's something that didn't happen before.
Well, yeah, that's what I also wanted to ask about, was just that percentage of Jewish voters that voted for the joint Arab list party. Where are they coming from? What is the background there, and why do they feel that kind of allegiance?
Simply, the left is out. There's no real left political party.
Okay.
Imagine this. I give you a short example. Kfar Qasim, the village of Esawi Frisch. They had a last election. They voted for Meretz, over 4,000 votes. This time, less than 700. This is the story.
That's a massive change.
Well, thank you for joining us with some more information about this.
Giving us a lot to think about going into this
absolutely.
coalition talks.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Okay, now it is confirmed 3 more Israelis have been diagnosed with coronavirus, bringing the official count in Israel to 15.
And among the infected are a 9th grader from central Israel and 2 elementary school employees whose students are also now in quarantine. But now, with maybe the worst timing possible, new reports suggest that Prime Minister Netanyahu might be next. The whole of Israel is waiting to hear the final election count, but Prime Minister Netanyahu's thoughts are likely now divided, with one ear to the results of the vote and the other towards the condition of IDF Major General Aaron Haliva. Haliva is the head of the IDF Operations Directorate, but he's now nearing the end of a 2-week home quarantine after returning from a personal trip to Italy in February. And this is a concern to the Prime Minister's office because Haliva, Prime Minister Netanyahu, Defense Minister Bennett, and a number of other high-ranking officials met shortly after Haliva's return to discuss the recent escalations in violence with Islamic Jihad terrorists in Gaza. So far, though, Haliva is thankfully healthy, and there's no evidence that he came in contact with the Prime Minister. And Netanyahu actually even stopped shaking hands altogether while on the campaign trail because of this exact situation. Now, in the meantime, as the infected count in Israel rises to 15, the home quarantine count is expected to more than double to nearly 11,000. It was around 5,000 until this week when a high schooler and the nation's 15th infected person was announced, and the 1,100 people from his high school, as well as the 5,300 people sat near him at a recent local soccer match, must now go into isolation. Then finally, that's not all. With the new reports in mind, the Health Ministry is now expanding its quarantine directorate. In addition to China, Macau, Hong Kong, Thailand, Singapore, South Korea, Japan, and Italy, Israelis recently returning now from Germany, France, Switzerland, Austria, and Spain also need to enter 14 days of quarantine.
Meanwhile, it looks like Israel's premier airline El Al is falling apart amid major losses because of the coronavirus. The airline has cut the salaries of its senior staff by 20%, axed 160 employees, and is planning to lay off 1,000 more.
Worst of all, the airline is cutting back on regular flights to Europe due to low demand. Flights have been totally halted to Italy and are now being cut down to Cyprus, Vienna, Budapest, Brussels, and Frankfurt. And El Al says that it will allow travelers who are set to fly to Thailand and Japan between April 30th and July 31st to change their flights free of charge.
And get this, Israel, which is a smaller Israeli airline, has also announced marked down tickets of $61 with free cancellation to European destinations this week to try and get travelers back in the air. So it might actually be time for us to be booking some vacations in advance. We'll see.
Maybe.
We'll
Yeah.
see if those prices
see.
actually, last until. I already started checking. I wanted to see if I book a trip in advance.
We'll see.
If, all right. Well.
Now, for a minute, let's turn our attentions to elections across the pond as Super Tuesday's winners have been announced. And with Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden scoring the biggest wins, the Democratic candidates for president are starting to really thin out.
Buttigieg and Klobuchar are out, and Gabbard is trailing with just one delegate's support, leaving former Vice President Biden, former Mayor Michael Bloomberg, and Senators Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren in the race for the Democratic nomination.
But realistically, with Bloomberg and Warren so far earning just 12 and 35 nominations respectively, it's unlikely that either of them will be going up against President Trump in the upcoming 2020 elections, especially after the Democratic primaries Super Tuesday results, in which Warren lost to Bernie Sanders in her home state of California. So that leaves Biden with 371 nominations to Sanders' 301.
I tell you with absolute confidence, we are going to win the Democratic nomination.
It feels good. I don't know what the outcome, what the actual results are, but it feels good, and we're feeling optimistic. I think we're going to do well in some other states as well.
Now, even though the list of presidential hopefuls is getting shorter, there are still a lot of lingering questions. Biden and Sanders have practically opposite beliefs with regards to running the country.
And regardless of which one ends up going against the president, their diehard supporters are predicted to split the Democratic base, making it easier for President Trump to snag a second term.
All right, well, the question here is how Israel is going to be impacted by the Democratic candidate that's chosen. All right, now it's time to learn about some must-see places to visit here in the Holy Land that even Israelis don't always know about. They're brought to you by Visit to Israel, and joining us is Uri Mor, owner and tour guide with the Let's Tour Israel travel agency.
Shalom.
Shalom. So what is up first?
First, we'll go to Enivka in the lower Galilee area, about an hour's drive from Tel Aviv. There's a beautiful valley, and in it a tiny spring, which most people don't know of. They just drive by next to it daily and don't know there's a small, beautiful spring that pours into a small, beautiful pool, about toddler depth. You can't drown in it. You can, immerse your body in it.
Just wet your feet.
Yeah, exactly. Put your feet, and then very beautiful, lazy hikes all around to see the blooming flowers. So in springtime, which is now, that would be the best time to go and see that spot.
Right, because, obviously the whole natural landscape is just so beautiful. And like you said, those flowers, I've heard a lot about them. So,
Yeah.
And that's in northern Israel, right?
Yeah, go and see them. Leave Tel Aviv, go see the flowers. It's the exact time for that.
Okay, perfect. All right, so what is up next?
Next is Tel Afek. Tel Afek is a big national park, which hosts yet another spring.
Yes.
The origin of the Yarkon River that actually flows through Tel Aviv all the way to the Mediterranean starts there, where it actually comes out when the water is clean and crisp and beautiful. There's also a fortress there built by our old friend King Herod.
We know him.
Of course. So the Via Maris, the road that goes through Israel, goes through there. And it was a strong place that you needed to guard and protect. So he builds a fortress dedicated to his father, Antipater. And everybody ruled from there because they wanted to be close to the road and close to the water sources. Today, there's a fortress there which is about 500 years old from the Ottoman period. You can walk in it. It's beautiful. It's used for all kinds of events. And you can go picnicking in the park.
You can also get married there. There's so many things you can do.
I know. You guys should
All right. Well, very cool. Okay, we have plans for the weekend. As per usual, every time you come here, you give us good things to do.
Have a great weekend outside of urban Tel Aviv.
I know. Thank you, Uli. Thanks for coming in.
You're welcome.
So much. All right, moving on. Israeli education is on the honor roll again this year, as several Israeli university departments are now listed among the top 100 in their fields worldwide.
The 10th annual edition of the QS World University Rankings is out, and 7 Israeli university departments have made the list, meaning that they rank in the top 100 departments around the globe in their field. The QS rankings primarily look at academic reputation, employer reputation, citations per paper, and research productivity. So, who made the list? Well, 86 programs in 8 Israeli institutions were under the microscope, and leading the Israeli rankers, we have the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, with 4 different programs making the index: the Theology, Divinity, and Religious Studies Department, the Ancient History Department, the Communications and Media Studies Department, and the Philosophy program. Then Tel Aviv University's Archaeology program, the Weizmann Institute's Biological Sciences program, and Technion Institute's Math department follow. Now, despite the great turnout, though, Israeli universities declined in the listing overall. In fact, since 2016, the total number of Israeli universities on the list halved in number, from 0.2% of the listing to 0.1%. It's official. Israel has just selected their national song for the 2020 Eurovision singing competition. And it's intense. ILTV's Nini Manson has the scoop, of course.
All right, guys. So for those of you who don't know what the Eurovision is, it's a huge deal. In Israel and in Europe, it's an annual international singing competition that's been going on since 1956. Over 50 countries compete each year by performing a song to represent their nation on the big stage.
Now, I absolutely love the Eurovision. It's a real shame that this event doesn't actually include countries from other parts of the world as well, because it's so much fun.
I know. Well, last year, the Eurovision was actually held in Israel because we won back in 2018 with Netta Barzilai's performance of the hit song, I'm Not Your Toy.
Yeah, I remember she made history as the third Israeli to have won the Eurovision for the Jewish state, and people were going crazy here.
Yeah, and because she won in Portugal, in 2019, the Eurovision was actually held in Tel Aviv, since the winning nation always gets to host the event in the coming year.
Yeah, so this year, Israel's very own Eden Aline will be representing Israel at the event in Rotterdam, Netherlands. And the people have spoken. Last night, Israelis voted for her to sing the song Feker Libi.
So tell us about the song, because I heard that she's singing in a bunch of languages.
Yeah, actually 4 languages. Eden is of Ethiopian descent, and the song that's been chosen for her to sing has lyrics in Amharic, as well as Arabic, English, and Hebrew. Even the title is in the Ethiopian language, and it means beloved or the love of my life.
Very cool. Now, it's interesting because unlike in the past, this year Israel created videos of her singing all 4 of the possible songs that could have been selected for her to perform at the Eurovision. So the Israelis that actually voted had a chance to really choose clearly what they wanted based on her singing performances of each of the songs.
Yeah, they used to do that back in the 80s, but for whatever reason, they changed that until now. And definitely check out the videos online. They're super fun. And anyhow, we're so excited for Eden, and I really hope the song will do better for us than last year, because Israel came in 23rd, which was a bit of a downer after a big win in 2018.
Yeah, I can't wait to see the Eurovision again this year, though. You know, I wasn't really that big into it until you moved to Israel.
Then you get into it.
It absorbs you, yeah.
Well, for those of you who are interested, it's going to be from May 12th to May 16th, and thanks for joining us, Nittany.
My pleasure.
All right, now this may be the most important news of the day. Anita is opening up in New York City, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, it's only my favorite gelato chain in Israel.
That's right. Anita is an Israeli family-owned boutique gelato chain in Israel, and it's known for having some of the best ice cream in the country.
And luckily for you guys, if you're not headed to Israel anytime soon, you can just go to the Upper East Side of Manhattan in New York for a taste. Anita will be launching there in April.
The shop is apparently going to over 1,000 square feet, and it's going to offer 150 flavors from dairy to sorbet and sugar-free and vegan options as well.
And if you're wondering what to order, try out the chocolate pretzel flavor, the Campari with grapefruit sorbet, the Cookie Man, which has meringue chips and chocolate.
Those are all my favorites. And there's also delicious Locher hazelnut wafer gelato, mascarpone with white chocolate and strawberry jam, and good old salted caramel.
Now, the list goes on, but we truly recommend trying this Israeli gelato brand out. They're also apparently planning to launch some unique flavors that are especially made for the New York palate. So if you get a taste, let us know what you think. All right, let's take a look at the weather forecast on that note. It's good weather for ice cream. Today is mostly sunny in Tel Aviv with a high of 73 degrees Fahrenheit or 22 Celsius. And then tomorrow should be even hotter with a high of 79 or 25 Celsius and partly cloudy skies, meaning it may be time to head to the beach. Now, if you can get an hour or 2 off of work, that's what I'm going to do. I don't think we have that off, unfortunately, but
dare to dream.
You know, we can dream. All right, now before we go, let's take a look at what's going viral in Israel.
That is how you exercise.
Wow, just everything about that dog is perfect.
Oh, what a good
My
bunny.
dogs are so badly trained. Like this. What? What is that? That is a different.
This
form
is how
of
you get your exercise when you're in isolation with coronavirus.
Yeah, I guess I need to stick my overweight Shih Tzus inside that thing and see if it works out. All right.
Good luck with that. That is it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.44 shekels to the American dollar. For more news from ILTV, please like ILTV on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube and Roku TV pages. I'm Aaron Porras.
And I'm Natasha Kirchek. Thanks for watching.